everyone. Hey, remember back to the beginning of the pandemic, like March 2020 time, where the entire world was home? Netflix, in their infinite wisdom, because I'm sure they had this schedule well before this, struck while the iron was hot. They had everybody at home, and they dropped Tiger King upon the world. Now, I don't think Tiger King would have done as well as it had if it had not been dropped during this time. Not saying that word of mouth, because I've seen people have mentioned documentaries they saw on Netflix, and word of mouth is very powerful, but not to the Tiger King levels of powerful. But the Tiger King story or saga or whatever doesn't seem to die, because they optioned, I think, both a show and a movie. One of them at one point had Nicolas Cage as Joe Exotic. I don't know if it's a show or the movie, but the first one to be released is Joe versus Carole. Joe versus Carole is on Peacock. It's an 8-part limited series. They dropped it all at the same time. And so it's, I believe, John Cameron Mitchell, who I'm not too familiar with, plays Joe Exotic, and Kate McKinnon is Carole Baskin. And basically it's the story of them, basically their feud. Now, we're going to talk about it. I watched all 8 parts of this. It was just released a couple days ago. I just ran through it because it's being billed as the story you know, but you only know half the tale, is basically what's being billed as. We're going to talk about that on Tom Was Here. Okay, so like I said, Joe versus Carole is being billed as that you only know half the story. The problem is that they don't really do anything more than what the documentary did. In fact, they're almost beat for beat what the documentary was. So it's not something where it's like, hey, this is half the story. It's actually, this is basically the dramatized version of the story you know from Tiger King. And the benefit of having, video footage and that documentary is that you can match as close to these characters with casting, with, costuming and makeup and all that stuff to make them look as close as possible. And they do that pretty good for the most part. The weird thing is that it's set up like 2 different shows. Because Joe Exotic and Carole Baskin never really meet, I don't know if they ever actually met. I think they show in the last episode, they have a courtroom scene where they're in the same courtroom together. I don't know if that actually happened. I don't know if they've ever actually met in person or have actually been in the same room together. So it's set up like 2 different shows. It's Kate McKinnon as Carole Baskin, and she has the voice, the walk, the look down. The only problem is that Kate McKinnon is significantly younger than Carole Baskin, and it shows. And they didn't really do much in terms of like makeup. There's a scene in the last episode, episode 8, where they show like a really close-up of her, and you can see they put like some wrinkles and stuff in. But for the most part, Kate McKinnon just looks like Kate McKinnon in a long wig and kind of the Carole Baskin clothes that she wears, the outrageous clothes that she wears. Her husband is played by Kyle MacLachlan, and he fills his part well, because if you watch the Tiger King documentary, they're kind of weird. Both her and her husband are just very, very odd people, and they fill that role pretty good. But their side of the story is, kind of like, they do a little, context. They do a little back of like their characters, showing like Carole Baskin's first marriage and her second marriage, and kind of the they allude to her husband going missing, but never really they don't want to get sued, so they're not going to go to that point. And he was definitely into some seedy dealings and stuff like that, but they never really get that far where they flat out accuse her of killing her husband. And then there's Joe's side, the wonderful cast of cartoon characters that we met in Tiger King, and everybody plays their role pretty good. I have to say the casting and the costuming and making it look the part is excellent. And, you know, it's a pretty good watch. It's not a, it's meant as a drama. There are times when they kind of portray both Joe Exotic and Carole Baskin to be sympathetic. I don't know if either of them deserve sympathy. Now, is it right that the man that killed tigers plotted to kill Carole Baskin is the star, whereas she, who was the one that got accused of killing her husband? Now, if she did kill her husband, obviously she deserves no sympathy because she tried to hide it or fed him the tigers or whatever, but that's not to say she didn't go through a hard time in abusive relationships. It's kind of like the Marcia Clark thing, when I watched The People versus O.J. Simpson, where you're like, wow, they really kind of gave Marcia Clark a hard time. And it's fair to say Carole Baskin got that as well, because she wasn't the mean personality. She wasn't the personality. She was the one that was against this cartoon character in Joe Exotic. So his show and her show run simultaneously. They run separately. So, you know, they interweave them, but it doesn't work as well as it does as Tiger King, the documentary. So it's definitely not it's an odd watch, kind of, because it's kind of like clashes. And it's hard to, usually when you make a true story for TV, it's usually something where it's like they exaggerate the story a bit. And can you exaggerate an exaggerated story? Because Tiger King was over the top. Tiger King as a documentary was over the top. Can you make a TV show that's more over the top? No. And then they failed in that approach. Now, I'm not saying this is, like I said, not a bad watch, and it's worth it for the performances and the characters, but they can't really make it more absurd than real life actually was. They just can't. They can't. You know, Kate McKinnon, for her credit, has the Carole Baskin impression down. Clearly she did a lot of research on this. But it never really adds more to its existence. Like, it's not like, it's like, here, wow, all these things that weren't revealed in Tiger King are actually in here. It doesn't add any more to it. It doesn't really change it. Like, it doesn't really say, like, this is a reason why this should exist. It's just like, here's this documentary of all these cartoon character people, these over-the-top people, and then we're going to make a movie or a show about it and just basically have real actors play those people. Now, the funny thing is, with TV, everybody's better looking than their real-life counterparts. Now, to their credit, there are some characters that look almost identical to their real-life counterparts. So, kudos there. But definitely, you know, it's basically just like watching Tiger King over again, but in a more melodramatic way. Like, the only thing new that they're bringing to the table are situations and instances of scenes that they couldn't know unless the person told them that. And no person probably told any of them that. Now, they do have a lot of, like, in no situation, I think all the animals in this thing are CGI. And you've seen TV CGI, but compared to, like, movies, like, of today, CGI kind of falls flat on TV, especially for, like, a limited series like this one. And if you're coming at this, and I'm sure someone's going to be coming at this, there has to be someone, and maybe lived under a rock, that never watched Tiger King and just stumbled upon this show. Maybe they're like a Kate McKinnon fan and whatever, and they're watching this. Similar to how I felt watching Tiger King. Because I said it about 20 times during it, and I know everybody else did. It's like, this can't be real people. This can't be real people. If you watch this show, and you never had the benefit of watching Tiger King, you wouldn't assume any of these people were real. In fact, this story is so far-fetched and over the top that it shouldn't be real. It shouldn't exist. The fact that it exists is absurd. So I understand the reason for them to take this into a show, because it's a unique tale. Hollywood and everybody's kind of starving for ideas. So here comes this off-the-wall story. This unbelievable story. And of course you're going to make it into a show. You're absolutely going to make it into a show. Why wouldn't you? There's rich characters that are over the top. And yeah, of course you're going to make this into a story. So I don't blame them for doing it. it's just, it doesn't really deliver on what's being sold as like you get some like additional things beyond Tiger King. It's basically almost like a beat for beat situation, almost a beat for beat shot of what Tiger King is. Like, they looked at Tiger King, they saw scenes, they added some little like drama elements or some like maybe like behind closed doors elements behind them, but it's basically Tiger King. And it's not nearly as absurd as real life. So, but it's good. Like I said, it's worth your time. It's 8 episodes. They're about, 15 minutes an episode. And it's good. Now, they try to paint Joe and Carole, especially towards the end, as kind of sympathetic characters who, didn't deserve their plight. And, you can draw your own opinions on that front. I don't know if neither of them are or deserve sympathy. They're just, part of a, Carole's not the rallying savior she presents herself as, and Joe is not the murderous psychopath that, maybe he presents himself as. He's somebody to get in over his head, didn't know any better to have resolved these issues, so he's like, I'm just going to hire a hitman. Like, he's just trying to find a way out of his problems, and, just an absurd way, and he took it too far. He just took it too far. So, final verdict, I would give this a 3 out of 5 stars. It's right in the middle. Like I said, it's worth your time. It's watch. It's 8 episodes, but don't go in there expecting something new. Similar to Tiger King 2, or even remember Making a Murderer. Remember that? And then they had Making a Murderer 2. Tiger King 2 was kind of the same way. It's like, here's a Tiger King 2, not released during the height of the pandemic. Doesn't have that word of mouth buzz. Really, they had nothing new to share. The story had been told, and bringing these people back to have them talk about the same experience didn't really do anything. And this is kind of in the same way, even though it is a show for entertainment. Now, there are some comedic elements, I guess you could say, but nothing overly funny that'd be like, oh, this is real funny. Just comedic, just kind of like absurdist elements, but as stated previously, nothing more absurd than real life. So give it a watch. Let me know your thoughts on Joe versus Carole. Like I said, I think the performers did their job very well. When I saw the trailer, I could see Kate McKinnon doing the impression, Carole Baskin. John Cameron Mitchell, I believe his name is, I'm not as familiar with, but, he kind of won me over. Like, when I saw him in the trailer, I was like, oh, he's wearing like a Joe Exotic Halloween costume. Like, there's nothing like, I don't see it. I didn't see it. But in the 8 episodes, he did win me over. Like, he pulls it off pretty convincingly and pretty well, and adds some kind of heart to a character that, it's really, like I said, a character that plays a character. But they add a little few background beats and things like that kind of add to it, but nothing more than if you've seen Tiger King, you've seen this story. There's nothing more they're bringing to it. But let me know your thoughts on Joe and Carole on Peacock. Guys, thanks so much for watching. If you are new here, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Like to support me on Patreon like John Bailey did, you can do so. Link is in the description below. If you'd like to buy a t-shirt, a TomWasHere t-shirt, you can do so at Spreadshirt, as well as links to my eBay store, Facebook page, Instagram, Clubhouse, and Pennsylvania Autograph Collectors Association. Links are in the description below. Joe versus Carole. Like I said, a 3 out of 5 stars watch for me. Kind of middle of the road. Certainly watchable, but not anything I'd be like, this is a must watch. Like, you have to watch the show. It's so great. But please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Not just of Joe versus Carole, but of Tiger King as well. Did it run its course, like with Tiger King 2? Did that, that had basically run its course. Like, I don't know if you can really put any more Tiger King stuff out and have it reach the levels that the pandemic era Tiger King did. I just don't think that's going to happen. But guys, thank you so much for watching. And until the next video, I will see you soon. But until then, bye everyone.